As of right now, to be really clear, they will have until if we pass it today, they'll have from today until June 1st to spend their money.
Their timeline keeps getting more and more compressed. It's already really difficult, I think, that we're asking them to spend their money within a 5 or 6 month period.
It is a Metro practice or Metro policy procedure that invoices are not paid until 30 days of the invoice date.
The policy regarding timeline is that applications need to be updated and resubmitted by February 18th, whereas on Commissioner Lefkowitz's timeline, the applications would close before that because application scoring would take place from February 12th to 18th. So there is a discrepancy there. You can adopt this timeline as a policy, and then staff will, that's basically a mandate for staff to operationalize it.
Your timeline is more detailed than the one we had in front of us before, so it seems like it would make sense to operationalize your timeline as part of this as well.
There is no timeline in the current document. The only time that's stated is that updated information must be submitted by February 18th.
We would be making a motion to move that date potentially earlier with the hopes, right, that we could operationalize things sooner.
Will adopting this timeline that Commissioner Lefkowitz has recommended put an undue burden on artists, given we're moving it up, and they have this new piece of finding a fiscal, what's the term? Sponsor, thank you. I know we want to get this money out and we want to move this forward, but is that going to put like an extra week? Is that important for artists compared to the overall need to get this money out?
Our community member who was on the working group wanted a fairly robust open period of the application to be equitable and accessible to individual artists with this new requirement. There has been talks in the working group that there is a lot of legwork that can happen between now and January 22nd to possibly speed that up. I cannot speak to where staff is at in planning or possibly implementing those measures immediately, which would allow for equitableness and more accessibility.
We've got a hard deadline of February 18th for applications that we're adding or amending in this timeline, that we would be looking at the rest of that week, the 19th through the 21st, for staff to do technical reviews, with the final week in February being graded by being the panelist grading and ranking, so that awards could start the process of dispersal in early March.
Contracts are sent out in early March.
Thank you. That was
not necessarily disbursement of funds in early March, because no funds can be dispersed without contracts that will have to go and be signed by the fiscal agents or the operating grant recipients, or whoever is receiving the grant, as well as a handful of other Metro officials, and be filed in the clerk's office, at which point then disbursement can take place.
Yes, thank you. So instead of disbursement in early March, contract in early March.
Yes.
And an expectation for staff to release a full and clear description of financial sponsorships by February 1st.
We did ask, and there were, I think, several council members who asked about that kind of extension possibility, or knew that there were other organizations where the grant period had been extended, and she looked into those, and those were multi-year grants, and so the scenario was different, and so in this case that would not apply. That's been our concern all along, is trying to ask or look for a way in which can we give people more time, and we have not been able to figure that out.
The deadline for this cycle, I believe, was January 19th, 2024. So these are applicants that were already in queue.
Just as a little background from yesterday's meeting, there was the desire to get this money in the hands of artists as soon as possible. So we talked about an even earlier possible timeline, but there was equal concern that the financial fiscal sponsor, I will learn that term one of these days, finding the fiscal sponsor and that process for artists might take a little more time and would be putting undue stress on them. So we sort of settled in a middle ground that would still get money in their hands quickly, but allow them to do that work with a little less stress.
Just want to be clear with the public watching that if you've been awarded a grant, you will receive an email and then your contracting will begin.
What is the time for the grantees to receive the email or the notice?
Yeah, I think we hope to get that out this week. Yeah.